The last link you posted worked for me, the one with the PWD.
Oh, the parameter? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Charlie.
Enter password. Just enter password.
Password. It's really strong. Cool. We can get started. For posterity, this is August 12th. APAC Plan Weekly.
Or
It doesn't
August
look like we
13th.
have any team updates or big picture things, so we can jump into demos, I guess, huh?
Cool. Axel, you're up first.
Oh, I am. Yeah, sorry. So, hello, guys. Girls. So I'm going to demo it, or more than a demo it's more than like an update of the work we have been doing on the swing lane sidebar. I have been mentioning that I have been working on the swing lane sidebar like every day in my stand-up. So yeah. The work basically is to replicate the cyber we have now on the boards to use Vue and Apollo. So here it is. Most of the work was on the framework of each of the items. So this is functional. And as you can see, it gave us like a lot of flexibility. Like these two shared like the same logic at the parent component and the same behavior that we saw on the regular board like this one. And it looks empty, but we keep working on adding more items this week, like the labels, for example. And yeah, that's it. It's a quick one. Feel free to ask any question you have.
Is that wider than the other sidebar?
No, it is a new one. In fact, as you can see, we don't actually have, we still need to connect it with the actual issue. We don't have like the issue title or the.
I just meant the width on screen. That one looks wider.
Yeah, there's follow-ups to get that. When I was designing the drawer with UX, we punted on the flexibility of being in the same width as the existing issue sidebar. So there's a few fast follows that we need to make it identical.
Okay, cool. Looks great. I love it.
Thank you.
It does. That's super exciting. So we're thinking, as far as at least the presentational side of it, of going with the, and actually we talked about this earlier, going with labels next. Gabe, I think you recently commented, maybe today, on trying to get the close button that's available in GitLab UI done on the sidebar. So that should be a simple thing, just to replace it. But we don't use we still have labels that are done in the labels component that's rendered in Haml that does not use the GitLab UI view component yet, which makes it a little bit difficult to do in those places. So my question for when we switch this, or when we create the view component, the labels view component, or when Axel does that next week, should we move forward with adding the close option, which will create a bit of inconsistency until we refactor all the other sidebar labels component? Or should we hold off on that?
Hold off.
Okay.
Do we have a definitive list of all the places where we need to refactor over to pajamas?
Oh, well, we have issues. I don't know if we have it all listed in one place, but I will add that to my list to do.
Cool. I can help too. I don't really know where all the places are, but I can, look at like files in our repo and try to figure it out if that's helpful. But I do think consistency should be our first goal for the user experience, and
that means that we have to delay that, I would opt for that. Open to opinions if others disagree, but that's my take.
Yeah, and we can probably, I mean, it's just passing a prop down, a view only prop down to the GitLab UI component. So once we get every component or every sidebar component to use the GitLab UI labels, then it'd be super easy to turn it on everywhere.
Cool, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I know sometimes when I was like selecting a label from the dropdown or something, it was a scope label. It wasn't styled the same way, so that was even jarring. So I'm all for optimizing like consistency first.
Cool. Okay, I have the next demo for Kushal and Eugenia. Let me share. Okay, filter by milestones. All right, so this is local. The component, the GitLab UI component here is still behind a feature flag because as we said last week, I believe, there are still some issues that we need to fix before we can turn this on in production. So locally we have milestone here. Cool. And then we're able to filter by milestone. We also get this with the epics list view, which will be good. So my question on here is, so this is behind the feature flag for the GitLab UI component, which we're not going to be able to get for at least a couple weeks. It's a fairly easy fix to add this to the old Hamel filter bar. The only problem is we don't support not filtering on Milestone yet. And it is extremely difficult in the old Hamel filter search to say, don't give me not filtering just for Milestone. So users would have the option to not filter a milestone, it just wouldn't work. So again, my question is, are we okay with that? Or do we hold off on adding milestones until we get this GitLab UI component done? And we can hold off. Keenan's probably should probably answer that. But just wanted you all to think about that. Cool. Questions, comments?
Hey, sorry, I was trying to add something to Jen at the same time you were demoing that. Are you saying that there's not hold off until what happens again?
Until we either so we can add milestones to the old version where, because not filtering is not supported on the backend yet, but in order to add the ability to not, there's so many nots. In order to add the ability to have it like we have it here, where it just shows the equal and doesn't even give you the option to not filter, it's really hard to do on the Hamel version of this. So what would happen if we turn this on is that users would have the option to select not filtering for milestones. It just wouldn't work. So that's option one. Option two is to hold off on supporting milestone filtering until we're able to turn on the GitLab UI component, which could happen in a couple weeks.
I was going to say, we have option one in a lot of places now, like, and it's frequently complained about, like an oft complained about thing, but it is like, that's the current status. So if we wanted to treat it as like getting something out, it's not it's not worse than, than a lot of places we have now. But
there's a lot of places that not filtering does not work, you're saying?
Yeah, I can track down the issue, but there are filter bars where you can select not equals, and then it has, for example, milestones, but you can't, like when you do it, it just does nothing. And then so that is to say, like, there are places where that problem exists now. This would be one additional place where that problem exists, but I'll leave it to Gabe to make a judgment call on which of those is worse or better.
Philosophically speaking, adding things to the product that don't work is like a bug and also technical debt. I think I'm not really sure like how everything's implemented, but I would ask the question of like, does it not work because we haven't implemented a GraphQL query or some parameter to pass through or something in the REST? But I got to expect everywhere across the product the filter bar to work exactly the same and to always work. So,
Yeah.
I like if it doesn't now, we should like write out an issue why it doesn't, and the things that need to be fixed, and figure out how to, like, when we do implement it, it works well. So I wouldn't add on to it. That's all.
Yeah, Keenan's the DRI for this feature, right? So we should let him weigh in tomorrow when he's online. My vote is option B, which is like, let's not add the debt now. If we know we're going to implement it and fix it or make it work, then, and that's like in the near term, then let's just wait. But we can let Keenan weigh in. And then I agree with Gabe. We should take a step back and look at all the places that are broken and understand why, and then come up with a plan to fix those.
I'll see if there's an issue to add not filtering to milestones on the back end. I'm assuming there is one, and I'll add it to the agenda. Okay, I have the next two, but I need to switch to master, so I'm going to let Simon jump up and demo his stuff while I switch over, please.
Ooh, let's do it. I can even probably demo project iterations if you want, unless you had something specific to demo, but here's a project iteration. But the thing I will actually demo is...
Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt you. Thank you for demoing that project iteration, because I didn't have any project iterations, so I was just going to demo the URL.
Yeah, I don't think I have any active either. That was just showing group ones in the project list. This, though, is the actual feature. If you edit now, then it adds /edit to the URL. And additionally, if you load the edit page, then it will load the edit form. So get excited, load edit pages directly. I'm pretty sure we didn't even do this for issues. So this is just a phenomenal feature to have for iterations. I'm thrilled.
I'm sorry, but I'm thrilled for a couple different reasons. One, using your back button in your browser now works correctly. Two, somebody reported this is like an issue early on that they didn't like, and in the next release, we will have a fix for it theoretically, which is great turnaround time on feedback. And I do think it's like sort of, it's one of those like quality of life things. It's like a small detail, but it adds to the overall like experience, which is great. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, good. And I also don't have any project iterations to demo. I'm sorry, Donald. I lied to you. But I can make one if you'd like.
Well, let's just talk through it then, because yeah, it's essentially just iterations view within a project. There is some conversation in the issue that I think, Gabe, you're following and providing feedback on. I don't know what the latest on that was, but what we're still trying to figure out, because it's confusing, because it's a little bit different than how we do project inheritance in other places. Because we're essentially saying it's still a group iteration, just scope to issues within a project when you look at a project iteration. Is that correct?
Yep. So it's like the reverse of how things roll up, things roll down. So the reason why is like in a lot of use cases, there will be some consultant or some part of the team who's only given permission to a project. And so if they want to be able to see their report view and they don't have access to the group, there'd be no way for them to ever see that. So it's kind of like the inverse of I think this is the more accurate way to inherit things from a top level group down into your project so you can see it scope just to your thing. It's the same problem where labels in your project that are group labels from two groups up don't show up in your project, even though you can add them to your issues in your project, or milestones that you can add to your issue don't show up in your milestone list. And so it's just like a weird thing where you're always having context switch into a different group or a parent group in order to see progress scope to just a given project. So the group by is so you can see things at a rolled up view, and then this is so that you can see things like within that specific project without leaving it, if that helps.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know where we were at as far as that. So I don't know if we have any questions, any further questions on that. But we can just look through the issue and see if there are.
Yeah, I think the last comment I made was just clarifying the goal, because I think at one point there was a suggestion or proposal to just like add a link to the group iteration report view with some like already pre-selected to just show the project information there, but that doesn't solve the use case of I don't have access to that group, so how can I see the report? So I'll check back in. I'm about 178 to-dos behind, but yeah, I think we'll figure it out.
I did have one question on the inheritance thing. If we're for subgroups, if in the iterations list we see the iterations from the parent group, but then clicking them goes to the actual parent group iteration, is that like unclear or non-obvious that we're then looking at and potentially editing a parent iteration rather than the subgroup one?
Yeah, so it's all one iteration. It's the same one, but it's like you can't edit it unless you're in the top level group or in the group where the iteration belongs to. And subgroups should also behave the same way as projects in a perfect world. So if I'm looking at it within a subgroup and I inherited the iteration from a parent group, I shouldn't be able to edit it within the subgroup, but I still should be able to look at the report there. So
okay.
It's okay if we don't get that for right now, but the whole like theory is like trying to respect least permissions while still giving people access to meaningful data within the things that they do have permission to view.
Okay. Because currently the list view ones, they just go to the actual parent group page. I don't think we don't have a separate page for subgroups.
I failed to specify that clearly in acceptance criteria, which I will take the full responsibility for, which means that we can implement that in the follow-on issue.
Cool. Thanks. I'm also happy to take responsibility for not asking earlier, but it's how it goes.
Yeah.
I fixed it now.
Yep.
Teamwork, team responsibility. Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, I am going to demo confidentiality on epics, the ability to update. Okay, so we previously had the ability to mark an epic as confidential when creating an epic, but once it was confidential, you were stuck. with it being confidential because we didn't have a way to update it, which we do now. I'm on master, so it is merge into master, should be in production in just a day or two, a couple days hopefully. Okay, so I'm in an Epic now. As you can see, our normal Epic sidebar now has confidentiality. I'm gonna edit it, turn on, woo, confidential Epic. Looks the other way. Public. That's that. Works similar to the way it works on issues. Oh, you know what? We should test it with a issue. That is, we'll make it a public issue. And then we'll try to, oh yeah, the error works too. Because we cannot make a confident or make an Epic confidential if it has public issues. If we were to go into here, make this confidential. Go into the Epic. Now we should be able to make this confidential. Oh yeah, look at that. The smooth demo.
Did we land on where, like, is that the functionality we want in the future as well? I think I saw Alexis wrote something about, or Holly, about like a confirmation, like, hey, if you make this Epic confidential, it makes all of its children confidential. Did we land on that?
Still discussing it.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
assuming in the future that will change. It's just a limitation currently.
Okay.
Cool. Gabe, you gonna demo some real-time sidebar?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
But it's a discussion, which point number 3 is issue-specific discussion and demos. So, but we had our real-time working group synchronous call this morning, and we now support WebSockets and real-time assignees for single instances. I think in 13.4, we will, the infrastructure team will be able to get WebSockets working in Kubernetes, which means that we can use it on .com. And so we're kind of servicing, we're at the point now where we can start making all the fields in the sidebar real time, which I haven't raised the issues yet today. I will do it tomorrow, but I just wanted to surface it that it'll probably require some front end refactoring, because I think right now, the way that we implemented the assignees field is it does some conditional checking if WebSockets is active, and then it uses a different component. And I'm not sure, but the like query for the WebSockets connection is just on the assignee field, but we might want to move it out towards the sidebar container, and or even theoretically the entire issue if we can, because I think each issue will be its own channel that you can connect to get broadcast when things change. So I more or less just wanted to say, like, it's awesome. Heinrich's done amazing work to get us this far, and Scott did great work on the first front end feature for real time. And I think we're at the point where we're ready to start scaling it out to more fields. So for how that impacts things going on issue boards and all these other places, we should start like just talking about it a little. So it's more like a public broadcast about where we're at with real time. That's all.
That's awesome. I'm super impressed because I know that that's really challenging, and especially within our application, it was a long road to get us to where we are now, but I'm super excited we're here and excited that we can start to raise the issues around where else to make things real time, which is going to be great.
Yeah, we still have some work around with quality engineering and just to make sure that it's performant at scale. And so I think we might have to like bounce some things and slowly scale it out. But what is also nice is like 2 or 3 months ago, they added broadcast to the GraphQL Ruby gem. So like that is what lets you broadcast a single change to many connected clients, which will be a huge performance gain. So you wouldn't have to do like a separate transaction for every single like request for new data. So we're exploring that too. And yeah, it's exciting. I would like to keep it slow and just do the sidebar and get that on issues and get that on .com production, and then take some performance measurements and memory measurements to make sure that we're within acceptable ranges. Then I think after we get that stabilized, it will be off to the races for, I think, any group that wants to use WebSockets for real-time stuff.
Sweet. I had the next one. This is mostly an FYI, so I'm just using this time to tell you about it and to encourage you to contribute. But I opened an issue yesterday after talking with the rest of the PMs and engineering managers to do an RCA around some of our recent challenges around sort of being over capacity, over committed, and generally just slipping on things. And so we don't have to use now to discuss, but I'd love for y'all to read through it. And if you have sort of context or input or information or just perspective that you can contribute, we've started the discussion in some threads on the issue, but please jump in there and add your point of view. This will help us as we discuss potential solutions and things we can do to mitigate this. So I'd love your input. We'll take the next couple of weeks probably to get this issue full in terms of information and breakdown of the challenge, and then have discussions later on what outcomes we want to reach for. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them now, but mostly just an FYI for you to take a look at the issue and contribute. And then to bring us home, unless people have other things, I shared a couple things that I thought were interesting that I'm not sure if the rest of the team have seen. I know Gabe shared this one. Actually, Gabe's here, so we can probably talk about the first one. He shared it in the feature room for this, but I thought it was cool to share with the rest of the team and look at some of that data. So Gabe, I don't know if you want to voice over the interesting Jira importer growth that we've seen in the last few months, or I can if you don't want to.
I'll let you do it, Justin, since you put it on the agenda.
All right. I was prepared to do it anyway, and your presence is a pleasant surprise. So Gabe pulled this data together, and we shipped the importer in, someone remind me, 12.10 or 13.0, right? And over the last just few months, it's just been tremendous growth. And the chart was updated recently, so it is across 2 scales instead of 1, because the total count of issues is obviously massive, imported issues. But I think it's just impressive that a feature in such a short amount of time has grown sort of 3x-ish. And really most interesting is the projects, projects with issue imports number is the most interesting to me, because a lot of projects or a lot of namespaces could choose to like play with the importer multiple times, which will boost the other metrics, but distinct projects with issue imports is really interesting. So I think that's good context. What it tells me as a narrative is that there are a lot of customers interested in importing away from Jira to use GitLab Plan. And so we're kind of in an interesting spot with the Atlassian integration. And with this, where we kind of have 2 options for customers and a pretty clear path to say like, hey, if you're, a hardened Jira customer, but you want to use like source code management and CI/CD, GitLab's a great solution. And then down the road, we have this really great importing utility that's going to enable you to move permanently your data from Jira into GitLab and start using GitLab Plan. So I thought this growth was great. It was something I wasn't paying that close of attention to. And then Gabe surfaced this data and I thought it was super cool and worth sharing.
I'll also add that I'm going to talk with Patrick Dooley and ecosystem, but I think there's a fairly clear path to merge the importer with the integration and have like because right now our integration is just API only, so we don't pull the Jira data in, so you can't use our other features like value stream management. But that's been a huge request from customers, and so I think there is a huge opportunity to do a data first integration to where we have the data as well. There have been a lot of customers who I've personally spoken to have said that they would love to use Jira issues with our portfolio management features, for example, which would only really work well if we had the data. I mean, you could do some hacky ORM thing, but anyway, we'll keep moving forward there. But I think there is a cool thing on the horizon where those two things can merge.
A customer could basically just choose to stop using Jira one day if they want to, instead of having to go through an import process, right? If we did that. So
Yep,
that's great. Cool. And the last thing I put on there is just another FYI, but this is the performance indicators for the dev section. And I'm actually working on MR to create a plan stage one, so it's just a little bit easier for us to look at the PIs. But for those of you who don't know, the product team has been working with the data team, and with many of you have had to implement some of the usage ping and other metrics to track a single, or in some cases, a couple sort of key performance indicators per stage and per group. And so on this page is all the dev section, but that link is directly to the plan section or plan stage PIs. And our focus is MAU or XMAU. So SMAU, stage monthly active users, or GMAU, group monthly active users. And so that's a breakdown of each group. And then obviously like the roll up for the stage. So we're going to use this as sort of a beacon going forward as our primary metric for the stage and our primary metric for each group. So we'll use this in our like first of the month metrics highlight update. But for each group, this is sort of the main thing we want to focus on driving going forward. And there's some improvements we're making to it. Gabe can speak to some of those for project management, and in addition to some of them for portfolio. But yeah, thought I'd share that. Take a look at it. That'll be kind of the canonical metrics that we will be looking at going forward. Anything else from anyone?
A question on that.
Sorry,
You go first, Gabe. No, please.
I was just going to say the charts aren't right, but at least in the group level numbers, for project management, I tried to include the actuals. So part of why there's a disparity is because we were experimenting on SaaS, if we could, like what the MAU would be if we tracked unique users who interacted with issues, whether that was commenting, editing, adding a label, etc. Whereas for usage ping, the only counter we have is for unique users creating issues. So we have an open issue that I think Heinrich is the DRA on, for adding the event tracking to the usage ping that we need for .com, so that we can have, for self-managed, so we can have like a unified dashboard. But that's just an FYI. On to you, Simon.
So the monthly active users is if they interact with it one time in a month?
Correct.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, and we don't have like a bot that just adds a label to every single issue on .com so that people then go and remove it because it's great for our stats? Because I'll do it.
Every metric that you pick will have some way you can game it. Hopefully this one, I think this one is, despite those potential things, is the most reflective of the type of growth we want, right? It's like you use interacting with issues. And if we get some bots in there, we can close our eyes.
Just do it. No, yeah, this seems good, since you're going for, it isn't just like, you couldn't just game this with a bot by saying, oh, 1 million issues have been updated, since you'd still need people to then go and
need people
update the issues afterward. Yeah.
And
also,
go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
I was just saying, like, .com is only 10% of our total like licensed users. So like you can't add a bot to self-manage. And so I think that's where it's kind of hard to game its scale given like our application environment.
My bot lives in the code base in self-hosted.
I was gonna say, the only bots that I know of that could cause problems are GitLab GitLab company bots.
Yeah, it just makes it worse for us. Oh, these are cool. Thanks for sharing.
I also think it's worth highlighting. I don't know if you saw I think we maybe talked about it last week, but the leadership is using the MAU numbers is like one of the weights that they put on R&D investment allocations. And so I think that's like, they're trying to standardize on that. So if we're showing forward progress, like I think the range is that we're at right now is like a 4 out of 5. Once we get above 200,000 unique users, then that bumps up to a 5, which then impacts like is another like indicator. It shows like, hey, we should think about giving them some more team members to grow. So fingers crossed. I'm shooting for 200K.
Yeah. What are the targets from? Are these just good numbers, or we think they're achievable, or what we'd like to get, or?
They're based on historical growth rates. And so I think this is where like we set a quarterly target. And I think we set that based on what our historical growth rate has been. Justin, I think you actually picked the target, so feel free to speak to that.
No, you hit the nail on the head. It's an average. Well, Gabe, you help me with this math, but it's an average from the last 4 or 5 months growth rate, and then model that out for the next 3 months. So it's a quarterly target. So yeah, 196K is that average, and we can share. I can go find the napkin math Gabe and I did.
But also, if you want to game it, you could help Heinrich work on implementing the usage ping counters, because what we found when we switched to just like .com measuring just MAU based on unique users creating issues to any unique user interacting with an issue in a meaningful way in a given month boosted our numbers by 30% for .com. And we haven't seen that reflected in our self-managed counts yet. So assuming we do the same thing in self-managed, we should see a 30% increase there.
Yep.
Which would put us over the 200K, which would be.
And you could help. There's an issue somewhere too for epics for portfolio management. Same thing. It's right now it's unique users creating epics. We want to move it to unique users interacting with epics, which could be like assigning an issue to an epic, commenting, all the same things that Gabe's tracking for issues. Cool. Anything else?
Just so it's on record, I don't advocate or support gaming metrics. Should look for legitimate numbers.
Recorded. Put it in the official ledger.
Scratch out Simon's name in my notebook that I was writing here.
Alrighty. Well, if there's nothing else, thanks everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day
Thanks,
or night.
everyone.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.